Hey, it's Jaliane, rhymes with Alien. Like if you're a fan, comment and subscribe. I decided to put this video together, and everything that you may need, all the links to everything will be in the description box if you want to go read more about it. But I'm just going to tell you some of the most important parts about the title that you may have read already. In order to make sure this video stays up, I had to say a few words differently, like in a more silly kind of way. I'm just letting you know in advance so you don't think that I'm pronouncing certain words incorrectly, because I am not. Vi0lence against Black women. Many types, far-reaching effects. Black women disproportionately experience Vi0lence at home, at school, on the job, and in their neighborhoods. The status of Black women in the United States details these many types of Vi0lence. Black women face high rates of intimate partner Vi0lence, grape, remove the G, and Homa to the side. Black girls and women also experience institutionalized racism. They are disproportionately punished in school, funneled into the criminal justice system after surviving physical or sexual altered abuse, disproportionately subjected to racial profiling and police brutality, and incarcerated at rates far exceeding their share of the population. By drawing on available studies, the report helps lay the foundation necessary for positive change. Study finds that nearly all Black women murdered by men are killed by someone they know, often with a gun. When murdered by men, 9 out of 10 Black women are almost always likely to be killed by someone they know, usually with a gun, according to a study by the Vi0lence Policy Center, VPC, in its September 2020 issue of When Men Murder Women. The study used 2018 data from the FBI's supplementary Homa to the Side report and focused on instances involving one female victim and one male offender. The VPC publishes this report annually before D0mestic Vi0lence Awareness Month in October. In the 2020 issue, the VPC highlights disproportionate Vi0lence against Black women, which is largely disregarded. You hear that? Largely disregarded. But yet there are movements for women, and these movements for women are being quiet when Black women are being killed. So if you are a Black woman, my question is, what does that tell you? What does that tell you, and what is it saying about these movements that say protect women? Because I think you know exactly what it's saying. Each topic covered in the report looked at data on Vi0lence affecting Black women and compares them to their white counterparts. In 2018, Black women were murdered by men at almost double the rate per 100,000 than white women. The VPC puts a spotlight on Vi0lence against women and its commonalities that are often overlooked. For many women, Vi0lence comes from unexpected sources like intimate partners or family members and takes place in the home or during arguments. The study finds that for Black women, where the relationship could be determined, 91% of Black females killed by males in single victim/single offender incidents knew their killer. Vi0lence in D0mestic spaces is exacerbated by the possession of fire to the arms, the study found. The VPC explored GUN Vi0lence extensively and found that having GUNS in a woman's home can escalate situations of D0mestic Vi0lence and result in D0mestic homicide and non-fatal shoe to the ting. This evidence supports the VPC's emphasis on limiting possessions of firearms, specifically hand to the GUNS, in homes, and recommends that a woman consider the risks of having a GUN in her home, whether she is in a D0mestic Vi0lence situation or not. Fire to the arms, especially hand to the GUNS, were the most common weapons used by males to murder to the dir black females, said the study. When the murder to the dir weapon could be identified, 64% of black female victims were SHOT and KILLED with GUNS. Within that group, 70% were KILLED with a hand to the GUN. Even without fire to the arms in the home, gun possession still possesses a threat to women when an adult abuser is an owner. While there are federal laws which prevent D0mestic adult abusers from purchasing fire to the arms, not all states allow the National Instant Criminal Background Check System (NICS) to see records of D0mestic Vi0lence protective orders. This allows for adult abusers to proceed unnoticed in fire to the arm transactions. With each annual When Men Murder the Dir Women report, the VPC draws similar conclusions, emphasizing the increasing gravity of Vi0lence against women and the need for change. The sad reality is that women are nearly always murdered to the dirt by someone they know, said VPC Legislative Director Kristen Rand. Vi0lence against black women is a disturbing and growing epidemic. Black MEN, why aren't you protecting us? According to the CDC, D0mestic Vi0lence is one of the leading causes of DEATH for black women between the ages of 15-35. Vi0lence against black women is a growing epidemic, with spikes happening all over the country. Black women are constantly in the crosshairs of physical and mental abuse, usually by someone who claims to love them. Yeah, love. Air quotes to both ends of that, please. Thank you very much. In a study by the Institute for Women's Policy Research, more than 4 in 10 black women experience physical Vi0lence from an intimate partner during their lifetimes. The study also found that more than 20% of black women are raped, remove the G, during their lifetimes. That's more than any other ethnic group combined. Black women also struggle with psychological abuse at significantly higher rates when compared to their white counterparts. According to the Vi0lence Policy Center, black women were also 3 times more likely to be murdered in D0mestic abuse situations, and 90% of black female victims know their KILLERS. In this place that I just couldn't find a proper pronunciation of, anyways, however it's pronounced, Virginia, the domestic Vi0lence against black women has seen such an uptick that many are sounding an alarm of panic. The Samaritan House D0mestic Vi0lence Center in Virginia Beach told WTKR that the city has seen a spike in local D0mestic Vi0lence, and it is very alarming. Women of color are KILLED at a more disproportionate rate than any other race, said the executive director of Samaritan House in an interview with WTKR. It's a disturbing trend we are seeing. Trend? I don't think so. I'll be reading this again, this part right down here, which we read above, but let's go. According to the CDC, D0mestic Vi0lence is one of the leading causes of DEATH for Black women between the ages of 15-35. I feel like you needed to hear that again. These disturbing statistics point directly to the failure of Black MEN, and it's disappointing. It's beyond that actually, but let's go with disappointing for now. Society programs Black MEN to be the protectors and providers, but instead many chose to be the predators. That sounds terrible being censored, but okay. Protecting Black women should be the priority for every Black MAN in that woman's life. Protecting her means saving children, revitalizing Black family structures, and strengthening the Black non-existing community overall. I usually say Black space. There is no Black community, but hey, if you believe in it, that's great for you. An unspoken epidemic. Homicide rate increase for Black women rivals that of Black MEN. 5 Black women and girls were KILLED'd each day in 2020. Most of them with GUNS. Gender Vi0lence must be at the center of the GUN debate, advocates say. In 2020, a year of rising homicides amid a devastating pandemic in the US, the increase in the DEATH rate for Black women rivaled that of Black MEN. As homicides increased nearly 30% nationwide that year, the rate for Black women and girls rose 33%. A sharper increase than for every demographic except Black MEN, and more than double that of white men, and more than double that of white women, according to a Guardian analysis of homicide data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. KILLINGS of Black women and girls increased across age groups, from school-age children to senior citizens. GUN Vi0lence drove the increase, with 3/4 of homicide victims who were Black women and girls die to the ing from GUNSHOT wounds. The increase only worsened an unspoken epidemic that has been unfolding over years, advocates say. From the mainstream feminist movement to the news media to law enforcement to community Vi0lence prevention organizations, many institutes have stayed silent. This is telling you everything you need to know about the crisis of Vi0lence against Black women, who are expected to care for others but often do not receive the same level of care they said. As you can see, I was correct. Women who are behind the Protect Women movement choose the kind of women that they want to protect. All really does mean something different to a few people out here, and they know who they are. But I digress. Let's continue. Black women and girls had the second highest homicide rate increase from 2019 to 2020. As you can see, Black women is right there, highlighted for you at 33%. This is craziness. I don't have any positive words. I don't like when people get KILLED'd. And honestly, seeing Black women's rate of being KILLED'd, it is really affecting me. This video is really freaking hard to make, but I decided to make it anyways because this needs to be out there, and this is just very disturbing. It really is. The heightened vulnerability of Black women to Vi0lence should be seen and addressed as a crisis alongside the already recognized epidemic of Black male homicide, Crenshaw said. Community Vi0lence prevention typically focuses on Black MEN and boys who face the highest risk of being KILLED'd, and D0mestic Vi0lence advocacy is most often shaped by the experiences of white women, researchers say. This creates a vacuum of solutions tailored to the unique ways that Black women and girls are vulnerable to Vi0lence. A national march against Black feminicide is being planned for late August in Washington, D.C., where the homicidicide rate for Black women was among the highest in the nation in 2020. Rosa Page, an Arkansas-based nurse and founder of Black Feminicide US, is helping to organize the march. When I saw the rate increasing, Page said, I just had to do something. There were 1,821 Black women and girls KILLED'd in 2020. That's 5 women and girls a day. This is sick. In a handful of states, including Kentucky and Ohio, as well as Washington, D.C., the number of KILLINGS doubled or even tripled. How much the increase in the homicidicide risk for Black women and girls was driven by D0mestic Vi0lence or other kinds of Vi0lence isn't completely clear. There are significant gaps in national law enforcement data about their murderers for nearly half of the KILLINGS of Black women and girls in 2020. The FBI's supplementary homicidicide report lists the relationship between the victim and the person who KILLED'd her as unknown. In a country where many neighborhoods and schools are racially segregated, many homicidicide victims are KILLED'd by someone of their same race, usually a man, according to FBI National Homicidicide Statistics. Law enforcement is less likely to know Black women and girls' relationship to their KILLERS. In almost half of cases, the offender's relationship to a Black female victim, as reported by local law enforcement to the FBI, is unknown. As you can see, for Black women victims, 45 is unknown, and white female victims, it's 22. These statistics are disturbing. I just don't think women should be KILLED'd just like that. I can't even, it's just not something that I can even fathom. I think that if she doesn't want you, or if she wants to leave the relationship, let her go, leave her alone. To literally end someone, it's sick. Or to just end a stranger or a family member. My goodness, this is so demonic. SHOOTINGS that happen inside homes or within families are often erased from the public debate over GUN Vi0lence, which frequently focuses on mass SHOOTINGS and street Vi0lence, advocates said. Focusing on gender Vi0lence as part of GUN Vi0lence is crucial, they said. The COVID pandemic, which had a disproportionate impact on marginalized communities, exacerbated the situation. The economic and emotional stress of the pandemic is the obvious explanation for increase in interpersonal Vi0lence, some advocates said. Across racial groups, GUN Vi0lence rose more in U.S. neighborhoods with higher levels of poverty, CDC researchers found. Wealthy neighborhoods saw smaller increases in fatal SHOOTINGS. Black women and many of the communities in which they live were deeply affected by the pandemic. People who were near the edge, COVID took a lot of them over, said Ivanka Hall, the executive director of the Northeast Ohio Black Health collision. People lost their loved ones. Many lost their jobs. Think about the mental health impact that it has on people who are already marginalized, where Black women are most at risk. Even before 2020, there were dramatic differences in homicide risk for Black women and girls across different U.S. states. In northeastern states like New York and New Jersey, Black women's homicide risk is lower than in the South. But it's in America's Midwest as well as in some southern states bordering the Midwest that Black women face the highest risk of being murdered to the dirt, not in the deep South, where Black women and girls have the highest homicide rates. The change between 2019 and 2020 in the homicide rate of Black women and girls per 100,000, showing the 26 states and Washington, D.C. that had at least 10 homicides of Black women or girls both years. As you can see, I also included the graph of this nonsense. I really wanted everyone who is a Black woman to see this, because this is very important that you know the places where you should not be and should not go. As you can see, what's good Washington, what's good Wisconsin, what's good Kentucky, and what's good every other place that is completely failing Black women. What's good? In the national's capital, homicide of Black women and girls more than doubled in 2020. Although it is home to some of America's most powerful Black people, it is also a majority Black city where many residents face intense disadvantages. 25 Black women were killed in the District of Columbia in 2020, according to CDC data, or data, whatever, compared with 10 the year before. No women of any other race were murdered in the district that year, according to the police department. Joanna Hardy, founder of GUN's Down Friday, said, "Until it gets worse, that's when they're going to make a change. It's sad to say that as more women get killed, they'll want to do something about it. They shouldn't have to wait for more women to be ended for them to do something. It's probably just going to get worse, and I am very, very upset about that, because probably when it gets to every 3 seconds, that's when people will take action and it'll be way too late. We have to stop the cycle. Some states are responding specifically to the threat of Vi0lence that Black women face. In 2021, Minnesota became the first state to establish a task force on missing and murdered Black women. Black legislators in other states, including Illinois and Wisconsin, are following suit, and Chicago Congressman Bobby Rush has proposed that Congress create a national task force on the same issue. They are moving too slow. That's all I have to say that's positive, and that's about it. Black women and girls need to know that work is being done to turn this tide. Jose, the Cleveland City Council member, said, "We don't have to be bystanders." Cleveland recently created its own Commission on Black Women and Girls in response to a 2020 City Lab report that named Cleveland the worst metropolitan area for Black women in the U.S. Black women, please, if you need to read that over, please do. And if you want to move to Cleveland, please don't. Let's continue. Show me the places where Black women and girls are thriving, Jose said. What does it look like? What does it feel like? Brown, the organizer from Iowa, emphasized the need to include the toll of Vi0lence on Black trans women and femme-facing folk as well as those who don't fit into gender binary. National homicide statistics do not identify whether victims are trans or gender non-conforming, and law enforcement agencies frequently misgender trans homicidal victims. Black women have a range of views on whether they think the criminal justice system can do much to reduce violence. Some, like Page, the Black feminicide U.S. founder, want to see law enforcement officials pay more attention to cases involving Black women and girls and support harsher criminal penalties for violence against women. Others argue that police and incarceration do more to hurt Black women than to protect them, and suggest that new community-based interventions are more likely to keep women and girls safe. Anyways, while their views on policing differ, many advocates agree that violence against Black women and girls demands a broad social response, not one confined to law enforcement. Institutions that have been largely silent on the issue, from feminist organizations to churches, need to speak up, they said. Good luck with that. You cannot solve a problem that you refuse to acknowledge, Crenshaw said. Black women should not be dying like this. They should not be. We should not be. Not at all. Why do these pregnant women have a higher risk of die to the ing from homicidal? We can't help mothers and their babies by ignoring the social factors that endanger their lives. A recent study in the journal Obstetrics and Gynecology found that homicidal is the leading cause of DEATH among pregnant women and women who are 6 weeks postpartum. Indeed, homicidal exceeds other leading causes of maternal mortality by more than 2-fold. In many cases, it seems the pregnancy is the reason for the violence. One of the most troubling findings of the study is that pregnant Black women are 8 times more likely to be killed by their intimate partner than non-pregnant Black women. Let that one sink in if you are a Black woman. It's important to note that the vast majority of these homicidals are committed in the homes of these pregnant women. In other words, we are talking about D0mestic violence, and Black women generally suffer D0mestic violence at a higher rate than white women. The authors speculate that systemic racism may be to blame for these DEATHs, and specifically that Black women are not being screened for D0mestic violence at their medical appointments at the same rate as white women. Sure, it would be great if more women of all backgrounds sought help when their relationships turned violent, but why do such a high percentage turn violent? Unfortunately, this kind of blindness to who is committing crimes against women and why seems to be more common in recent years. The way we talk about the missing and the murdered women in this country suggests that we don't know who is responsible for these tragedies. And we do know who is responsible for these tragedies, but I digress. The evidence, however, suggests that women are being victimized by the people closest to them, and until we understand what motivates those crimes and the circumstances, which likely include extramarital births and multiple partner fertility, our ability to save the lives of women and children will be significantly hampered. What is the connection between D0mestic violence, sexual assault, and reproductive justice, and how does it impact Black women? Black women have a complicated historical and contemporary relationship with D0mestic Vi0lence and sexual abuse within the United States. This has resulted in the highest rates of both D0mestic Vi0lence and sexual abuse victimization for Black women than any other ethnic/racial group. An estimated 45.1% of Black women experience contact sexual Vi0lence, physical Vi0lence, and/or stalking by an intimate partner in their life. 35.5% of Black women experience some form of contact sexual Vi0lence during their lifetime. 21.2% of Black women report being raped, remove the G, during their lifetime. Despite high rates of physical and sexual abuse, discriminatory practices against Black people and Black women and femmes in particular have led to both a lack of access to quality sexual and reproductive care and/or ethical, non-discriminatory health care treatment towards Black patients. This often results in high rates of maternal risks and mortality, infant mortality, and transmission of sexual transmitted infection STIs, including HIV, among Black women. The physical, sexual, and reproductive exploitation of Black women in the United States. Historically, Black women have always been denied decisions regarding their own sexuality and reproductive rights. We all know why I'm saying a lot of these words in here like this, so bear with me. Thank you very much. There has always been physical or sexual harm directed at Black women's bodies, often for the benefits of others. Therefore, in order to effectively fight against Black women's inadequate access to quality health care and reproductive rights, there must first be an exploration of the historical factors in this country that started the denial of Black women's rights over their bodies. Specifically, a focus needs to be on the United States' intentional control and experimentation with Black women's autonomy, physical, mental, and sexual health in a manner that has benefited white society's social and economic well-being. Slavery is the clearest example of this exploitation. Many enslaved Black women became sexually and physically victimized during slavery through legalized rape, remove the G, and sexual assault. This is very hard for me to read, to be honest with you. I am having technical difficulties, not with the vocabulary, but just with the fact that this type of stuff was the reality of Black women and still is the reality of many Black women to this day. So please excuse me if I trip and fall over most of these monstrosities that I have to read through. Perpetrated by white men. Yeah, I really tripped over all of that, but I don't even know at this point. There was also legal reproductive exploitation, wherein Black mothers were used to reproduce in order to create more slaves for slave owners. However, even after the end of slavery in 1865, the denial of Black women's bodily autonomy persisted well into the Jim Crow era. And unfortunately, through contemporary times, Black women's bodies have been irrevocably harmed by forced sterilization and hysterectomies as a tool to control the Black population within the United States. Systematically, this is illustrated by giving Black women fewer opportunities for quality health care that is equitable to their white counterparts. Higher rates of cesarean sections among Black women, pregnant Black women experiencing inadequate care for pain compared to their white counterparts, and being subjected to a health system run by physicians with little empathy for people with experiences different than their own. This article says little empathy, but I'm just going to say no empathy at all. None. Although some of this equitable healthcare may be class defined by the fact that many Black women live in low-income communities, this would ignore the substandard healthcare resulting in high mortality rates suffered by upper and middle class Black women. According to the Centers for Disease Control, Black mothers in the United States, regardless of economic or educational status, are 243% more likely to die from pregnancy or childbirth related causes than their white mother counterparts. It appears that racism dictates which women get the appropriate level of reproductive and sexual health care in this country. As stated in the NPR article, Black mothers keep die to the ing after birth. Shalon Irving's story explains why. Many social scientists and medical researchers now agree that the problem isn't race but racism. All of these wicked people will reap what they sow, because this is just evil. This is vile. I don't have anything positive to say about what I'm reading out loud, because reading it in my head versus reading it out loud hits very differently in more ways than one. If D0mestic, Vi0lence, intimate partner, Vi0lence, and sexual coercion is defined as a pattern of behaviors by one party to maintain power and control over another party in an intimate, D0mestic, or sexual context, then it is easy to see how an adult abuser can use the reproductive factors listed above to perpetuate reproductive adult abuse. It is also easy to see that, as applied to Black women, reproductive adult abuse is yet another intimate method of denying Black women autonomy and control over their bodies and sexuality. Examples of reproductive adult abuse in a D0mestic and sexual Vi0lence context include forcing or denying a person to get an adult abortion, forcing other forms of birth control on a person, sabotaging or denying a person's access to birth control, refusal of a person to wear condoms during intercourse, pressure on a person to have children, purposefully impregnating a person against their desires, lack of purposeful access to adult abortions, birth control, or maternal health, trauma and stress of adult abuse leading to unhealthy pregnancies and births, intentionally exposing sexual partner to STIs including HIV, denial of Black women's victim to the hood. Another essential factor at the core of Black women's experience regarding reproductive and gender-based adult abuse in the United States is the constant denial of Black women's victim to the hood. Black women have been denied victim to the hood by law during slavery and Jim Crow, where it was not illegal to grape, or sexually assault Black women, and in current de facto practices today. In Hood Feminitarianism, notes from the Women That a Movement Forgot, Mickey Kendall explicitly speaks about the fact that Black women who face sexual adult abuse even before adulthood are often labeled fast-tailed retroactively by people who need to believe that what happened to them was their fault. That is disgusting. That is vile. It's sick. And that this fact is inextricably related to the long history of justifying slavery and both the physical and sexual violence perpetrated against Black women. Before we move on, I would like to say that people who justify slavery need to go through it, and then we'll see what they justify after they are put in a coffin or a white sheet and thrown into the ground. But I digress. The American healthcare system's inability to provide adequate and equitable medical care for Black women as compared to white women. Also speaks to Black women's lack of victimhood or acknowledgement of the importance of healthy Black motherhood. In terms of reproductive justice, this ultimately means that Black women, by virtue of their gender and race, receive less quality prenatal and post-birth health care than their white counterparts, if they are able to receive prenatal care at all, leading to higher prenatal and infant mortality rates and adverse sexual and reproductive health outcomes. Intimate partner Vi0lence endangers pregnant people and their infants. The problem Vi0lence against pregnant people inflicts lasting harm on them and their babies. Intimate partner Vi0lence, IPV, also commonly referred to as D0mestic Vi0lence, is endemic in the United States, with nearly 1 in 3 women experiencing physical Vi0lence by an intimate partner over their lifetime. IPV can also include emotional, sexual, and economic abuse. More than 1/3 of women report psychological aggression by an intimate partner, and nearly 20% report sexual Vi0lence by an intimate partner during their lifetime. In addition, financial or economic abuse occurs in 99% of cases where other forms of IPV are also present. Early evidence indicates that cases of D0mestic Vi0lence have increased and become more severe during the COVID pandemic. Pregnancy can often be an especially risky period for IPV, as many women report that abuse started or intensified when they became pregnant. Let's act like we don't know who is impregnating them. Let's act like we don't know. Each year, an estimated 324,000 pregnant people in the United States are battered by their intimate partners. This is a lot. IPV during pregnancy can hurt both maternal and infant health. Furthermore, even though D0mestic Vi0lence is more common among pregnant women than are other conditions for which they are routinely screened, such as gestational diabetes or preeclampsia, few providers screen pregnant patients for abuse. I am just going to leave this on the screen for a few seconds so this number could sink in. For people who don't understand how big this number is, I don't know what to tell you, but this is a real problem. When it comes to things like this, I have to bring awareness. The lives of women who are pregnant and women in general, especially Black women, are just going down the drain and going into the soil, and this is not right. Let this sink in. Changes need to be made. Intimate partner Vi0lence increases risk of pregnancy complications and poor health for moms and babies. Systemic reviews, rigorous reviews that collect, assess, and synthesize the best available evidence from existing studies, have found women who are abused during pregnancy are more likely to receive no prenatal care or to delay care until later than recommended. Women experiencing D0mestic Vi0lence during pregnancy are 3 times more likely to report symptoms of depression in the postnatal period than women who did not experience D0mestic Vi0lence while pregnant. Maternal exposure to D0mestic Vi0lence is associated with significantly increased risk of low birth weight and preterm birth. Women who experience IPV during pregnancy are about 3 times more likely to suffer prenatal DEATH than women who do not experience IPV. Other individual studies have found that 63% of female homicidal victims were KILLED'd by an intimate partner in cases where the victims knew the offender. Homa to the side is a leading cause of traumatic DEATH for pregnant and postpartum women, accounting for 31% of maternal injury DEATHs. Infants exposed to IPV can show signs of trauma, including eating problems, sleep disturbances, higher irritability, and delays in development. These harms can be mitigated by the presence of a secure relationship with a safe caregiver. Black, Indigenous, and other people of color are disproportionately harmed by intimate partner Vi0lence. Black, Indigenous, and other people of color, BIPOC, people suffer the impact of IPV disproportionately, particularly considering that these communities tend to have less access to the care and resources that would prevent, mitigate, and remedy the effects of IPV. Available reported data appears to indicate a high rate of IPV in some BIPOC communities. 45% of Black women report physical Vi0lence, sexual Vi0lence, and or stalking by an intimate partner in their lifetime, which is almost 20% higher than the rate reported by non-Hispanic white women. 48% of American Indian/Alaska Native women report physical Vi0lence, sexual Vi0lence, and or stalking by an intimate partner in their lifetime, which is more than 25% higher than the rate reported by non-Hispanic white women. Compared to their white counterparts, Black women survivors of IPV have higher rates of depression, PTSD, and suicidal ideation or suicidal attempts. Research also indicates that factors related to socioeconomic and immigrant status negatively impact survivors' physical and mental health outcomes. Black and Latina survivors are less likely to seek physical or behavioral health care for their IPV injuries compared with white survivors. Reasons for not seeking care include lack of insurance coverage or affordable health care, distrust of providers, historical and ongoing racism and trauma, fear of discrimination, and barriers due to immigration status. Before I go, I also had to add this to the end as well. For all the Black women out there who don't want to listen when people tell you to leave these circus fruits alone, this last one is for you. Study finds nearly 90% of Black Homa to the side, Vic to the Thames were KILLED'd with GUNS. If you want to be part of the 90%, I will never tell you to be part of the 90%, but if you want to do it anyways, I cannot stop you, but I'm just saying, let us try to be one less. Thank you very much. If you made it this far, please subscribe. If you need more time, just check out my channel. There are many videos there. I'll even put 2 right here so you could check them out. No pressure. And with that said, don't be too problematic. Be as polite as possible. This video was hard as heck to make, and I'll see you next time.